of co-hosts to, if they can, turn on their cameras. Excellent. Great to see all of you. I am Mark Levine, City Council member from the 7th District in Northern Manhattan, chair of the City Council's Health Committee. And I'm thrilled that we are joined tonight by my co-host, Congressmember Adriano Espaillat, our Congressmember who I think is joining us from the Capitol tonight, where he'll be moving in and out between floor votes. Do I have that right, Congressman?
That's right. That's right. Thank you so much, Mark. Do you hear me?
Okay, I was having a hard time hearing you, but I think that might be my...
Do you hear me now?
Ah, there we go. Excellent.
Yes, I'm in the Capitol right now, but thank you for having me on as well. Thank you.
We're honored to have you. Also co-hosting tonight, our Assembly member, Carmen de la Rosa. We'll hear from her in a moment. Thank you so much. And co-hosting with us, State Senator Robert Jackson. So happy that you are with us. And we have two esteemed leaders from our Department of Education, our Deputy Chancellor Adrienne Austin, as well as the Manhattan Executive Superintendent Marisol Rosales. So tonight is an opportunity for all of you members of the public in Northern Manhattan to discuss and ask questions as the reopening of our school year looms large amidst the pandemic. We are all extremely concerned about balancing the need to keep students and families, teachers and staff safe at a time when we know the pandemic is far from over. Also, the need to get young people back to in-person learning experiences for their social, emotional, and educational well-being. The needs of parents, many of whom are returning to work, and more who will be in the fall, who need help with childcare, so there's an economic issue there. This is a lot to balance, and I'm so thrilled that we have experts here to discuss with all of you in our community, already 266 of you who've joined us tonight. So I'm going to cue it to our fellow hosts for brief opening remarks, and we'll start with you, Congressmember Adriano Espaillat, please.
Thank you, Mark. I hope you could hear me.
Yes.
And this is an important issue, obviously, for the district and nationally at that. But particularly for the 13th district, I'm very concerned. Safety, reopening our schools should be our first priority. The safety of our kids, the safety of our teachers, the safety of our school personnel, everyone involved, and families really need to feel confident that they're going to send their children to a safe environment. And so that's important to me, and I'm sure it's important to everybody that's tuning in today as we approach the opening date of the next school year in the fall. And New York City has made some great strides in combating the COVID-19 pandemic, but we need to really be sure that everything will be safe, that the funding will be there to address safety standards in each and every one of the schools. And that hopefully we could do this in unison with the rest of the state so that everybody's safe in New York State. I know that the White House continues to push us to open recklessly, and we're not going to do that. We're going to take our time. We're going to go through this, and we're going to make sure that the measures are taken that will ensure that every child is safe. So I thank you, Mark, for hosting this. This is a very important meeting. For many, many parents have stopped me in the streets across the district and have communicated with me of their concern about the opening of the new school year. So thank you so much for your dedication, Mark, and your concern on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congressmember. And we understand if you have to step out for votes tonight. We know you're doing very important work for us down in DC. I'm thrilled now to pass it off to our Assembly member, Carmen de la Rosa, who it looks like you might be joining us from Albany. Is that right, Assembly member?
Yes, I'm at that other state capital. And I think Robert's here too. Hi, Robert. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to Mark and to all the administrators of the DOE for having this conversation. The Congressman is absolutely right. This is one of the most important conversations that we can be having at this moment, because in my mind, this is a conversation that is proactive to a decision being made by the authorities as to whether we reopen schools and how we do that. It also serves in this dark time as an opportunity for us to reimagine and reshape the way we want to see education happening in our state and in our city. For me, I'm a mother. My child is going into the first grade at PS 278, and we're excited about first grade. Unfortunately, kindergarten, was cut short due to COVID-19, and there are so many issues that have bubbled up because of COVID-19, and I hope that we can address them. But the main issue is the safety of our students, the safety of the educators, as well as how will we contend with remote learning, whether it's on a short scale or on a larger scale, as we continue to move on. It's summertime. We also are concerned about the summer slide and making sure that our children are not falling behind. These are issues that I think we should be addressing proactively, as well as preparing for the new school year. Everything that has to do with class size, with the ability for students to take exams, state exams, and all of that, and any assessments. And so I just hope to engage in this conversation, to listen from our constituents to the things that we should also continue to prioritize. And I hope that we can get to a point where we feel confident that the system is able to operate in a way that it will save not only our children, but also educators who have been essential and have put their lives on the line, and many of them paid with their lives during COVID-19. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Assembly Member. And also joining us live from the state capitol, State Senator Robert Jackson.
Hi, everyone. Well, thank you, Mark, and for our co-hosts for being here and waiting to see what the Deputy Chancellor and the Executive Superintendent has to say, because I know that there's a long way to go. And I know, like everyone else, there are no magic solution. I, just like everyone knows, that we have to be as flexible as can be in everything we do. But as we all said, the primary concern is the safety of everyone involved. The students, the parents, the educators, all of them. And many educators are parents themselves that have children in school. And as you know, especially older individuals, meaning 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, children with underlying health conditions, those are the most vulnerable individuals. And so we must take all the precautions that are absolutely necessary in order to make sure that we're safe. And as I've said, even when I asked a couple of questions of the Chancellor, as far as consultation, the school leadership teams must be involved at the local and regional level. Absolutely. Because you know why? We're all in this together. We're all in this together. And that's very, very important. Understanding that there's no magic solution, and understanding that the action that we're going to take has to be in the best interest of not only the students, but of the staff also. Okay? And we all know this is going to cost a lot more money. Just to clean the schools, when one group comes in and they 2 days and then another group comes in, there's supposed to be thorough cleaning. And also the HVAC systems and the AC systems supposedly, and sanitizer and face mask, and all that's money. So, Congressmember, down in Washington, we know that part of the big picture is money for education, money for housing, money for rent and mortgages. So keep plugging in there for us down there. We know that you are, and the Democrats overall. But obviously, Mark, these are the issues and concerns that many people have. I have a bill that basically in the state Senate that would fund foundation aid that would bring in over $4 billion. But right now in the state is $16 billion in the hole. And the city is billions of dollars in the hole. And so we all know that. And so we all have to be flexible enough to come up with the best scenarios, not one scenario, scenarios that's going to help everyone. And so I'm sure that the DOE, the chancellor, and all of the staff, there's a list of 2,000 to 3,000 questions that have gone through already in order to try to bring about how we're going to do this. And I'm looking forward to working with them and working with the parents and educators to make sure that we do the best we can. And if in fact, if it's not working, we have to move quickly to make the correction. Don't hesitate. Let's do what we have to do, because no one is perfect and there's not going to be a perfect answer. So please understand that, everyone. And I thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Robert. And we're up to over 360 members of the public with us now. I think most of you are public school parents, as am I. And we want to make sure we get to as many of your questions as possible. But first, I want to cue our Deputy Superintendent, Austin. Deputy Chancellor. We also have our Executive Superintendent, Marisol Rosales. But I'll cue you, Deputy Chancellor Austin, for some opening remarks and some on the latest for what we're planning for our schools this fall, please. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening. I just want to start by thanking you, Congressman Espaillat, Assemblymember De La Rosa, Council Member Levine, and Senator Jackson for organizing the event tonight. I know a lot of parents really want to know what's happening. We had our first family and student information session last week on Thursday, had close to 30,000 parents come, and I think that just speaks to where we are and parents wanting to know what's happening. So thank you. Certainly the topic of tonight's discussion, the future of the New York City public education system, is very exciting. We are living in a transformative moment in time where we're all finding new ways to approach how we work, how we socially connect, how we learn and communicate information in an environment where there's just a lot of uncertainty. We've experienced monumental shifts in public education over the last several weeks, months. And I just want to take a moment to thank our principals, our teachers, guidance counselors, school food workers, custodians, and all of DOE staff, because while our mission to educate our students is the same, the work has dramatically changed, and our workforce has mobilized quickly, and we are still adapting to this new reality. So thank you to our staff. Also, thank you to our family. Partnerships with our parents and communities has never been more important than it is now in this moment. And we are working together to reimagine public education with our families. So thank you. And with that, I want to just quickly talk through some of the program models that the Chancellor and Mayor announced as part of our plan to implement blended learning. I think we have a presentation, if we can cue up the deck. Thank you for that. I want to just preface this by saying, there are really difficult decisions ahead of us. And there was a lot of preparation, and we are certainly still preparing and working with our principals to prepare for the reopening in the fall. As part of the planning process, the reopening team incorporated parent and student feedback into the models. We had a family and student survey on reopening where we heard from over 450,000 parents and over 100,000 students. And so with that, I just want to use that as the frame to how we came to some of these options. So if we can go to the next slide. I don't know if we can cue to the next one. Thank you. So there are some key tenets of the plan. Families are going to have the ability to opt out of in-person instruction and choose full-time remote learning. The deadline for submitting that request to go full in on remote learning is August 7th. Parents will then be able to opt back into remote learning at different intervals. So there'll be a schedule, but August 7th is going to be the deadline for that first decision. And then we haven't yet indicated the calendar by which parents can change their mind if they want to opt back in. But that's going to be the process for how families can. And that's simply for planning purposes. Principals need to know fairly quickly how they're going to be able to program students and decide what kind of program model they'll be able to accommodate. And so they need to know from families how many families plan on having their children come back in person very, very soon. So August 7th is the deadline for that. The split models are based on local constraints. So we are implementing social distancing in our schools, And that is what these models are based on. So it's going to be determined by the number of students that are opting in. We are aiming to have at least 33% of our students present for in-person instruction. And so that's what these split program models account for. And then just in terms of spacing, with social distancing, we are looking to make sure that there is a median range of between 9 to 12 students per classroom. And so that's going to obviously depend on the size of the classroom. In different schools and different classrooms, that's going to look different, but that's our sort of baseline planning. If we can cue to the next. So we've set a floor, but not a ceiling, and we are, again, planning to serve at least 1/3 of our students at any given time, hoping that we'll be able to do more. This is a summary of, is program model 1, 1A, and 1B. Model 1 assumes a minimum of 50% of students will be present for in-person learning. And so students will receive in-person instruction for the same 2 days every week and every other Monday. There'll be 3 groups in total, and 1 group will be all remote. So if you look at models 1A and 1B, you see group D is the all remote group. So that's for parents who opt into remote only from Monday through Friday. And then you see the interval between groups A and groups B. Group A has a steady days of Tuesdays and Thursdays with alternating Monday, and then group B alternating Wednesdays and Fridays, alternating Monday as well. That's model 1A. And it's similar for model 1B in that it again assumes a minimum of 50% of students electing to return for in-person instruction. So I'll just give you a moment. I find these to be really, the visuals to be helpful. Okay, we can go to the next. This is model 2. Model 2 assumes that we'll be able to accommodate 33% of students for in-person instruction. The first model 1 was for elementary, middle, and high school. Again, model 2, the same, elementary, middle, and high schools. We'll look at this model and be able to select from this model. Again, group D is the remote only instruction. So for students who are remote only, Monday through Friday, that's group D. And then when you look, group A alternates. And again, it is assuming 33% of students will be able to be accommodated by the capacity, the space capacity of the school. 1 day will be the same each week with rotating Mondays and Tuesdays on a 3-week cycle there. So for example, 1 cohort consistently comes in Wednesday, 1 Thursday, 1 Friday, rotating Monday and Tuesday among the 3 cohorts. So that's model 2. Again, this is based on the assessment that principals are going to do on how many students they can accommodate in person for in-person instruction. Okay, we can go to model 3. Thank you. Model 3 is for middle schools and high schools only. And so those principals for middle schools and high schools will be able to select this model if this works for their school communities. It assumes, again, 33% of students will be able to be accommodated for in-person instruction. And it is a 6-day rotation. So it's in-person instruction once every 4 days or in-person instruction 2 days out of 6. And I think out of all the models, this is the most complex, but this is something that the high school principals are already familiar with. They already operate on similar 6-day rotation models. And so that's part of the reason why we included this as an option for high schools. And models 4 and 5 are for our District 75 schools only. Many of our District 75 schools will be able to accommodate students in a different way. And obviously, it reflects the unique needs and challenges of our students with disabilities. And so we wanted to be able to have a model that would allow for students with disabilities in District 75 schools to attend every other week or full time. So if you look at model 4A, Group D is remote instruction only. Group A and Group B alternate, but it's all 5 days of the week for Group A, week 1, and then alternating to Group B all 5 days of the week 2, and then alternating Group A would come back that week 3 in that sort of schedule. And model 4B, again, the difference between 4A and 4B is if you notice there's a Group C, and that Group C would be consistently from week to week, every day, Monday through Friday for in-person instruction. So with that, that's sort of an overview of where we are with the program models and the work that principals will be doing from now until the next few weeks into August. Certainly, as was referenced by Senator Jackson, it's important that these decisions are made in partnership with school communities. And so the school leadership team of each school is going to be involved in reviewing these models and looking at the data, the survey data, and partnering with the principal in selecting the model that's going to be right for the school community. I am very honored and humbled tonight to be joined by my colleague, Executive Superintendent Marisol Rosales, who is here, and I want to turn over the floor to her to be able to share some words. She is our leader of our public education in Manhattan. She oversees the superintendents in Manhattan, the principals in Manhattan, the schools, and so very excited that she's here joining me tonight and want to give her the floor.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chancellor Austin. I am Marisol Rosales, so happy to be here. I am responsible and privileged for serving 116,000 of our students. I hope everyone in this call is safe and well, and my thoughts and prayers are with those of you who've been impacted directly from this pandemic. Something that has resonated with me throughout this is connectedness, communication, hope, and safety. So I just want to thank Congressman Adriano Espaillat, State Senator Robert Jackson, State Assemblymember Carmen de la Rosa, and Council Member Mark Levine for creating this forum and for your incredible partnership over the year, the support you provide for our districts, schools, and their communities. Es un placer estar aquí con ustedes. I also want to say that in the midst of all this, I am really hopeful that our collective experiences, our challenges, many of your sacrifices have actually created opportunities for us to rethink education and humanity. There's no doubt in my mind that we will come out of this as stronger leaders and educators and definitely kinder people. I want to thank our families for their partnership, flexibility, our principals, our superintendents, and everyone involved. I do want to actually share, Deputy Chancellor, some of the survey results that we administer back in June when we send that anonymous survey, because I think it's really important to share the sentiment of our families, and it's really important to emphasize the fact that the models that you just described came out of some of the survey results. And so I do want to share with everybody here that across the city, there were about 300 families that completed that survey. We in Manhattan have 116 families, 116,000 families. We had about 40,000 families who completed that survey. And I just want to share sort of what they stated. 37% of our families anticipate the need for childcare during the week. So, so this is serious and this is important. Nearly all families and students who responded identify the importance of having cleaning supplies. 65 to 70% of students in grades 6 through 12 reported that they were very comfortable wearing a mask. 60% of our families reported feeling very comfortable sending their child to school, to a school building, and 60% of our students reported feeling very comfortable going to a school building every day this fall. Among options for reopening, about 56% of our families identify alternating school days, which is what you were referring to, as the most preferred option compared to learning at home. Most families, about 84% and about 80% of students identify instruction in core content areas. So that would be math, science, social studies, and ELA as the most important experience to prioritize for in-person learning. 70% of our families chose live instruction, the most helpful method, while learning at home. And finally, 93% of families and 90% of students responded that they have access to a computer or device. And 96% of families said that they have access to internet Wi-Fi. And I also want you to know that once we receive this survey, and I met with our CEC presidents, and a special shout out to each one of them for their advocacy in their councils. They asked that we break down this data even further. And so we did that. And just last week, I share the survey results by district, by school with each superintendent and CEC president, so that at their next CEC meeting, they'll be able to share that with families.
Thank you very much, Deputy Superintendent and Deputy Chancellor. We want to start with questions from the public. We have over 400 people who are on the Zoom right now. And Congressmember and Carmen and Robert, also feel free to participate with your questions if you have any. But I just want to point out one we've gotten from so many people. You mentioned Deputy Superintendent, Executive Superintendent, that 37% of families mentioned they have a child care challenge. And so for those families who are going to go back to work and for whom only having the child in school 2 or 3 days a week presents a challenge, I understand that the city is now talking about expanded childcare options. Could you please tell us the latest on those plans for those families who really do need a 5-day-a-week option?
Sure. I think I'll defer to Deputy Chancellor Austin so that she could speak on behalf of the entire city at this point. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll just share what I know. The mayor announced last week that there would be free childcare for 100,000 students in the fall, and we're looking to increase that number where we can. This is an incredibly challenging feat. Obviously, the reason why we're going into remote learning and why we're having some of the capacity issues that we have is because we are implementing social distancing. And so, space is an issue. Being able to accommodate as many students without compromising the health and safety of both students and staff is how we're thinking about this. And so we are certainly working with the city to think through childcare options and support that, but it is a real challenge, and it's one that we're still, quite frankly, working through.
Yes, Mark, this is Congressman Espaillat.
Yes.
I want to weigh in on the childcare issue. There is an urgent need, obviously, for family home-based daycare. There are hundreds of providers across the city. Parents could choose now to go local, maybe in their own building, in their own street, in their own neighborhood, even maybe with somebody they know. And there are hundreds of family-based daycare providers who saw a drop in childcare as universal pre-K and 3K kicked in. And so they are available right now, and I feel that they should be engaged by the Department of Education. Not all of them feel as though they're being engaged for this challenge that awaits us as early as August 9th, when people have to decide on whether or not they're going to go virtual which I think is too early, by the way. I think that's too early for any parent to make up their mind. I think there's still confusion, and we should give them a little bit more time. But my concern is regarding home-based daycare providers, many of which feel that the Department of Education has not engaged them for the challenges that face our children and our families this September. Thank you.
Thanks. If I could just respond to that. Thank you, Congressman Espaillat, for raising that. I know you're scheduled to have a conversation with our Deputy Chancellor Wallach just to follow up on that concern and make sure that we are doing all we can to address it. It's certainly a challenge. So I thank you for raising it here.
Okay, we have a question from Leanne, who's a middle school parent uptown, who asked whether there are plans to close off adjacent or surrounding streets so that classes can be held outside.
So I will start that, and then I will hand it off to you, Executive Superintendent Rosales, just to follow up. We are first and foremost thinking about the health and safety of our students, and so when you think through what that looks like in New York City, where the idea of shutting down, I just want you all to think about how close in proximity schools are to one another, and what would potentially happen if we were to shut down every other block in New York City to hold classes. And so I like the thinking out of the box. I think it's valuable, and certainly I think we are in the position where all plans are on the table. But I can imagine that it would be incredibly challenging, particularly in this time where, you know, we're struggling in the public education system, our parents are struggling, but our businesses are also struggling. So thinking through how we would manage to sort of shut down traffic across the city and, you know, every other block in certain places in Manhattan, it would be really challenging. But I'll pass it over to Executive Superintendent Rosales just to talk through thoughts about how we are thinking about outside space.
Yeah, I think we are here in Manhattan, we're innovators, right? Our leaders are super creative, and the support in families is super helpful and productive when it comes to thinking outside of the box, which is what you just said. And so I know principals will be holding meetings with families and with their school leadership teams to think and to try to leverage and maximize every possible space, and even some of our community partners as well. So if there is one thing that I have learned through this pandemic is the need for families to be partners and to communicate with principals and be part of the school leadership team to ensure that we're coming together as true collaborators.
Thank you. Allison is asking, will families be notified if there is an active COVID case in their school building? And perhaps you could also tell us the protocols for when and whether a school building might be shut down due to the presence of one or more confirmed cases.
Yes, thank you for that question. That's actually something that I know our Deputy Chancellor of School Climate and Wellness is actually thinking about now. I will share with you all that we have a community roundtable on reopening, and on that community roundtable, there are community activists, there are parent leaders, there are CBO partners, and so this is actually a topic that was shared with them last Friday, just to start workshopping and thinking through what the policy needs to look like. And I believe by the end of the week, we may actually be making an announcement on this. So I want to say that this is front and center of what we're thinking about, and we are already soliciting feedback from our communities about, you know, what kind of policies parents would like to see, what kind of notification protocols, not just that the DOHMH and other health officials are advising, but also what families need to have confidence in our schools. And so I'm hoping for an announcement later this week.
Anna Giannotti is asking whether teachers can be included in those roundtable discussions.
Yes, and there actually are teachers on that roundtable. I didn't mention and shout out teachers, but obviously, you know, you can't have a community roundtable without teachers. So there are teachers on the roundtable. I will also share that that is our roundtable for sort of the community. So there are parent leaders, there are community-based advocates, there are teachers, there are executive superintendents. There's a whole bunch of people on that roundtable, but there are other working groups that include, like, mostly teachers that are a part of our reorganizing engagement. So I shouted out one, but there's multiple ongoing because there's an 8-part framework that's pretty complicated.
Hey, Mark, there was a question that was asked, and which is appropriate considering the budget deficit that the city is in, the state is in, and quite frankly, we don't know whether or not that education is going to be cut by the state even more than it currently is. So people asked the question, several of them on people that logged in, you're going to hire more staff in order to carry out all of the detailed work that needs to be done as far as remote learning, in learning, what happens when someone is having symptoms where you automatically go into voluntary quarantine until you get the results. So what's happening with staffing point of view? Do you plan on hiring more staff? In what capacity? Teachers, you know, school aides, paraprofessionals, you know, nurses. I know you must have discussed that, but I know you must discuss it in terms of the budget. So can you give any insight as to what the opinion is from DOE right now and about that?
Yes, thank you for the question. Thank you for raising that. We
Well,
are.
they raised it in the chat.
Thank you for raising it in the chat, and also Senator Jackson for articulating it, because I know it's top of mind for a lot of people across the city. We obviously had really serious budget cuts, and what the people in our budget office, our CFO, really wanted to do was to make sure that those budget cuts weren't felt by schools. And so initially there were a lot of cuts that were announced months ago, where it looked like there were going to be cuts to the Fair Student Funding Formula, and it looked like there might be cuts to our social workers. Those got rolled back. And so we are really thankful and grateful that our school social workers through Good Shepherd are still going to be supporting our schools. We're grateful that there aren't direct cuts to schools. But what that has meant is that there have been dramatic cuts to our central administration. And just to give you all an idea, because I think people think, oh, cuts to central, no big deal. The central administration supports the budgeting, supports the professional development for our teachers and our principals, supports, you know, you name it, our special education services, all of these, there's really serious supports from central that go directly to schools to make sure that schools are able to you know, provide the highest quality education possible to our students. And so we are seeing some serious cuts. To your point about, or the point that the question made about staffing, we're having to rethink staffing. We are in a hiring freeze, and that's because of the budget crisis. And so, you know, from a central perspective, as we lose people, as through attrition, through retirement, through whatever it is, those positions are being swept. So there, you know, there's no replacing people once they're gone. That's the consequence for central. Obviously, with schools, we think about hiring a little bit differently because we have mandates. And so we're going to make sure that if there's a need for a special education teacher, there's going to be a hiring of a special education teacher. Same for our ENL teachers. Same for any teacher that, you know, we need to be able to service our students in terms of having the appropriate licenses. But at the same time, there's a hiring freeze. And so we are rethinking staffing, and we're looking at how our credentialed teachers are deployed across Central. And we're rethinking some of that, and are trying to be as creative as possible. We're an army of 150,000 employees, which is like, you know, a lot of people to service 1.1 million students. The numbers are incredible, but we're rethinking a lot of our staffing to make sure that the supports are going to the schools first. And then trying to strengthen and streamline so that we can provide the needed services to those staff that are in the schools to be able to work effectively. With that, though, I want to bring in Executive Superintendent Rosales, because she's going to tell you what it looks like in Manhattan.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I do want families to be sure that supports to schools will continue to be efficient for sure. And so what we have learned is that developing the capacity of staff, support staff, teachers, principals, district teams, and the Manhattan Borough citywide office is critical. And so
That's our Congress member. He has to mute. He's
and
trying
so,
to take that business in Washington for us.
That's and so the idea of, just to give you an example, when it comes to trauma-informed pedagogy, trauma-informed practices, blended learning, and all of the professional learning that will go to support teachers and principals, that is all being done at the borough citywide office and districts teams to ensure that our teachers and our administrative staff are ready and equipped to support students. So while we do have budget cuts at Central and some of them impacting our office in Manhattan, I just want everybody to know that we are being creative, and we're making sure that supports for schools will continue to take place.
I have a question actually, Mark.
Please.
And it's about the budget cuts. So, and one of the things that is concerning is when you show the model about the classroom learning, there was a significant reduction in class size. And so how do we manage the reduction in class size given budget cuts? Does that mean that we hire more teachers? Is that based on the assumption that more people will keep their children at home? How do we work around the class size and the budgetary issues that we have right now?
I'll kick it off and then I'll pass it over to our executive superintendent. It just means that we are thinking creatively. We are obviously working really closely with our labor partners to solve for what is a very difficult problem. And so, you know, we are going to get there by September. We are going to have a solution to make sure that we've done this in the most effective way. I'll give you an example of something that has worked before this COVID environment came, and that was the Bronx Plan. And so we had done some really, really skillful negotiations with our partner UFT to think through how to best utilize teachers that had like an expertise, like let's say in, I don't know, calculus, for example. Let's say where you had one school in the Bronx that had a really great calculus teacher, but you didn't have AP calculus teacher, but you didn't have one in the sister school, but you had students that wanted to take that class. And so as a part of that collective bargaining, we had an agreement to say, okay, this really great skillful calculus teacher in school A will live stream to school B so that those students who want to take the AP calculus exam in school B will be able to do so because they'll be signed up for that class. So that's just an example of like how that can be done, how that's been done in the past with DOE through really skillful negotiations with our labor partners. And so more to come. We're working on it, and I'll pass it to our executive superintendent if you want to just weigh in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, two things. One is I just want to go back. I wanted to go back to the models, right? Each one of these models was designed to meet the demands of either 50% of students attending schools or 30% of students attending school, right? That's why you have children coming in twice a day and staying home the other 2 days, or any of these models. And then the other thing I want to say is that we have learned so much through remote learning in terms of developing and strengthening the capacity of our teachers. And some of them are super well versed when it comes to remote learning. And so it's about sort of leveraging the talents and the expertise of teachers. But the models that Deputy Chancellor shared earlier make sure that all the factors around space, students register for remote learning, and staff were into place.
Thank you. Atina Bazin has asked, in light of the momentum of the Black Lives Matter movement, whether the DOE is accounting for the disproportionate impact that COVID is having on communities of color. And she's reminding us of the 5 R's that have been identified in the Integrate NYC platform. And a number of others have asked about racial inequality and who has the ability to keep their kids at home because they have a parent present, and whether there'll be inequality in and among schools that some might be better resourced to handle the burdens of this blended learning model. So several themes related to equity, and perhaps Deputy Chancellor, you can speak on that.
Yes, certainly. Equity is at the core of our planning and how we're thinking about this. And certainly, you know, it goes without saying that there are areas that were more hard hit by COVID than others. I've been in places in the Bronx where, you know, parents have essentially like virtually stood up and said that they've lost 20, 30 close friends and family members due to COVID. And I think that is just the reality of the socioeconomic impact of this virus. It has hit certain zip codes harder than others. And that is it's complicated in terms of how to plan around that. And I know parents are, you know, making very difficult decisions because at the same time, a lot of the essential workers and the people that are, you know, are working poor are people of color. And so that is the complicated and very challenging position we're in, is that there will be a lot of pressure for some of our most vulnerable parents, families to, you know, to participate in these public spaces where, you know, potentially these communities are at greater risk. And so we're thinking through that. It's certainly a part of our challenge is how to account for that, how to think and solve for that issue. But it's a challenge that, you know, I don't think any of us have quite figured out yet, to be honest. And so I welcome feedback. I'm here to listen as much as I am to answer questions, particularly now because I don't have great answers to a lot of the great questions that folks have. but certainly it's top of mind as a woman of color who's lost her grandmother and my in-laws' grandmother during COVID due to COVID. So I'm not a stranger to it. It's very personal, but I also don't have a solution for it. So I thank you. I'm thankful that it was raised, and we are certainly thinking about it. I will turn it over because I know Executive Superintendent Rosales, you've done a lot of equity work in your districts. And so just to talk about that and how you're keeping that front and center during your planning.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think this pandemic has definitely elevated the inequities of our system, right? Especially here in the city as well. And in Manhattan, we've had some districts that have been impacted more than others, for sure. In fact, there was one school in District 5 that at some point had lost 15 members of their community, whether it was paraprofessionals or family members or staff members. So we truly understand the inequities of our system, of our nation, and how they're showing up through this pandemic. And what's been really important for all of us, all of our superintendents and our BCO, is that the concept of trauma-informed pedagogy has to be embedded in the curricula. Social emotional support, restorative circles, restorative work has to be part of the curriculum. And while we continue to manage and bring in resources, and we continue to partner with community-based organizations, we're also making sure that we are extending our support to districts and schools that need it the most right now. So I do appreciate that question for sure, because that is at the core of our work.
Thank you. And Deputy Chancellor, so sorry for your loss, multiple losses in your family. That's heartbreaking. Seems like almost no family has been left untouched by this horrible pandemic. We have to always remember that incredible human cost. So our condolences. We have a question from Elisa East about testing, meaning testing for the virus, COVID testing, and the realization that people can be asymptomatic and still transmit the virus. And so her concern, her question is about the extent to which we're going to be testing regularly in our schools so that we can catch cases before someone is infected with the virus.
Thank you. That's a question we've gotten quite a lot. I know there are a lot of parents who are thinking about testing. There are staff members who are thinking about testing, and we are working with DOHMH around a policy and working very closely with Test and Trace to develop a protocol on this. So more to come. We have not announced a policy yet, but we are thinking about it and trying to figure out how, which direction we're going to go, how we would operationalize that. And obviously the nature of this virus is that you can be asymptomatic for a really extended period of time, which complicates the detection of the virus, and also our ability to respond quickly and rapidly to be able to remove the threat of the virus. So it's top of mind, no solutions yet, but hoping to be able to articulate a policy soon.
Hey, Mark, I know that on the chat, and I'm trying to read it, the questions are coming in so fast, like you gotta have, but the question as far as remote learning, people wanna know, are they gonna be taught by the teachers that have a connection to the school, or they're going to be centralized? And those are the people want to know, because there's a relationship, both emotional and learning how to work with one another as far as teachers and students and staff. So that's a big question people want to know.
Yes, I've gotten that question. I actually was talking in cabinet about this very question earlier today. And I can just tell you that we're talking about it at DOE. We have not solved for this yet. We are still in the process of finding out how many students are coming for in-person learning, how many families are going to be selecting into remote-only learning. And then we are, still figuring out like how many of our staff are going to be requesting a reasonable accommodation to be able to work from home, how many of our staff are coming back. And so we really are trying to get a handle on the numbers and what's realistic and what we can do. And we're still in that process of going through and sorting through the data and waiting to get that feedback from families and from staff so that we can make more clear plans. And this is in some ways going to be a school-based, a lot of this is going to be different from school to school. Every school is going to look a little bit different because staffing is going to look different at different schools. And then families who are opting out or in is going to look different from school to school. And so we have these program models. We have an exception process for schools that, you know, for whatever reason have some unique circumstance that they need to create a different model that's not one of the program models. But we don't have a lot of specificity right now of like how we're going to do staffing, what exactly it's going to look like, because the numbers is going to dictate a lot of that. But I'll pass it over to our executive superintendent just to share how it's looking on the ground and what those conversations are.
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is our instructional leads and our academic policy leads have been trained on some of these platforms, right? Like iLearn and Google Classroom, so that we are developing the capacity of principals and teachers on those platforms. Our instructional teams have been supporting schools during remote learning on Google Classroom and will continue to do so. And so, you know, just again to reassure our families that for us, this time between now and re-entry is about developing the capacity of all stakeholders on these platforms. And the last thing I want to say is back to our collaboration with our CEC presidents. They asked for to be trained on these platforms in blended learning. And so we are at the Manhattan BCO will be training CEC members, and we'll have videos for them to then share with all families across our district. So I also want you to know that.
Yeah, I have a question. Add to that comment. Sorry, Congressman. I just wanted to add to that comment that it's important also to take into account multilingual learners.
Yes.
We have plenty of them in the school system, and parents of multilingual learners are at a specific disadvantage when it comes to these learning platforms. So maybe rolling out something like a parent academy that is connected to maybe the work that the CEC doing or the school leadership team is doing, so that parents can catch up. I mean, I know that, for example, I'm 34 years old, but the math my daughter's learning is completely different from my math, right? And I'm sure that as we get older in the generation, there's that divide. Imagine doing that without speaking a word of English, right? And so we need to take that into account. And I want to highlight, because I saw in the chat as well, the needs of special education students, students with IEPs. That's very important as we look at these platforms as well.
Yes, thank you, Carmen. My question is, I know that during distance learning, there was issues with students' access to Wi-Fi and technology in general. In fact, I think the board had, the Department of Education had to distribute thousands of laptops to students. And I know that in Manhattan, because some of the cable companies did not extend the special offering that they gave to parents, that hundreds, if not a few thousand children and families, for that matter, were left with Wi-Fi. I wonder if you had, if the department had a number of how many children are in that category that don't have access to Wi-Fi or technology needed to really be able to benefit from distance learning from the virtual schooling that you're about to engage in.
I know Executive Superintendent Rosales has a survey number, so if you want to share, I can give sort of a global. I'll start with a large framing, and then I'll hand it over to you, Executive Superintendent Rosales. We distributed 300,000 iPads from like March to June to families who did not have access to electronic devices, and those iPads were connected with T-Mobile. Prior to that, schools themselves had distributed close to 200,000. So that's about almost close to 500,000 electronic devices out to families, just to try to bridge that digital divide that we know is real. But I'm gonna pass it to Executive Superintendent Rosales to talk about, to talk a little bit about what the survey results said about access to technology.
Yeah, so we've been working really, really hard to ensure that our families have access not just to devices, but Wi-Fi enabled devices. So 96% of our families have access to those devices that are Wi-Fi enabled. The other thing I do want to say is that if there are families still who need devices, they can continue to call 935-5100 to ask for a device. That's 718-935-5100 and ask for a Wi-Fi enabled device, because my understanding is that we had ordered additional devices. And so, if families still need to have one, please call that number.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had several questions about those students who opt for 100% virtual learning, and a question about whether they will still, this is from Nina, whether those students will still be taught by their teacher or whether that will be managed by some sort of central pedagogical team. And then a related question from Jerry is that asking whether live classes will be made available for those students so that they can be part of the regular classroom experience, even if they're not able to appear there in person.
Yeah, thank you. Great questions. Principals are still assessing what is staffing going to look like in the fall. And that's going to be a large part of, the next, 2 to 3 weeks. And then from there, coming back to the table to say, okay, here's what staffing looks like and here's where we need support. And all of us doing our best thinking on how to support our schools to make sure that we have teachers for the classes, for the students. So more to come. We're still sort of in the design phase of what that's going to look like. I can tell you this, because obviously we're in negotiations with our union partners around what instruction will look like in the fall. During the summer remote learning, it was important to us, based on what we had heard from families, to make sure we were doing more synchronous live instruction. And we negotiated for the summer that students would receive at least 65 minutes a day of live instruction. And so that was part of the negotiation for the summer. That was like making sure that there was a standard for synchronous instruction. And we're learning a lot. We're learning more and more every day about summer instruction and summer remote learning, which is always complicated and difficult because it is a centrally managed summer school. But we are hoping to take in what we're learning and improve upon the remote learning that we're providing in the fall based on lessons learned and based on the success that we're seeing with the synchronous instruction over the summer. I don't know, Marisol, if you have anything to add on live instruction and sort of what you've seen and how you've seen it work in Manhattan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think in places and schools where we saw the most significant number of student interaction were places where there was live instruction for sure. And so that is something we're working on, to developing the capacity of teachers, but we do see the difference that it makes to have a teacher checking in with children, whether it's large, small, or one-on-one, that there is no comparison. I also want to say that we have many cases where children, depending on the age group, did better with remote learning than with the live teaching. So what we have learned across our districts is that as we think about returning to school, a combination of what works best for children is the way we're gonna go.
Thank you. We have a question from Reverend Michelle Sweeting DeCaro, who asked about how lunch and PE and other such activities will be handled in school buildings where you're obviously taking extra precautions because of the virus.
Yeah, thank you, Reverend, for that question. We are obviously thinking about minimizing movement in school buildings, thinking about ways to do that to promote health and safety. And so we are looking at, lunch in classrooms is what folks are talking about. And I think was referenced in the guidelines that the state put out last week. And so we're thinking through that. Obviously, everything has its challenges, and we all, this is a matter of sort of re-envisioning what school looks like for everyone. You know, all of us remember big cafeterias and everybody being in the same space and you know, kind of being together and socializing, and it's going to look different in the fall. It has to, because of the virus, and we are thinking through what does it look like to have lunch in classrooms, what would that look like, and we obviously are looking to provide PPE to everyone and to make sure that everyone has masks, and that would be a central operation, centrally funded, making sure that schools have PPE. But
And
also,
will everyone would be required to wear a mask? All students, staff, even younger students with disabilities?
you know, like, obviously that we are working through a protocol. We have not yet announced a policy on how exactly it would work. And I'm in the business of talking to families. And so I know there are a lot of families of young children, parents of students with disabilities, parents of students with asthma, who say, you know, realistically, you know, my child can't be in a space with a mask on. What are you going to do if my child can't actually wear a mask for the entire day? So we're thoughtful, we're sensitive, we're listening, we're trying to find solutions in this space. And we haven't come to a policy that we've articulated yet about what we're going to do, how we would enforce this, how it's going to practically work. We're working through that. But certainly we know it's important to teachers, we know it's important to students that everyone's health and safety is the focus of whatever policies and protocols we issue.
Hey, Mark, DOE for a long time was serving breakfast in the classrooms. And so I think serving lunchrooms in the classrooms is appropriate. As we all know, we have to be very flexible. And as far as children that cannot wear a mask for whatever reason, you know, they have these face shields now, Mark, which comes all the way down, but it's not as restrictive as masks. But you know, this is the big question which everyone wants to know, especially since other municipalities, some of them are saying, nope, we're not opening in September, because with everything that's going on, even though New York is at the low end as far as infection rate, you know, but it's going up a little bit because it's summertime and everybody wants to get out. So the question I know you have asked yourselves and discussed it, are we going to open in September or not? And just go to remote learning for everybody? And that's the big question. And I know if in fact you think about that, if we go that's a total shift than what you put forward in the PowerPoint. But we cannot be glued to one thing. And, you know, so have you all discussed that at DOE? I would hope the answer is yes. Deputy Superintendent, Deputy Chancellor, help me out. Help us out.
We're responsible leaders, right? So we think through every possibility, and we're going to be prepared for any possibility. We are planning day by day. We are taking it day by day, because you have to, in this environment with this virus, where literally every day the dynamic changes, and we're seeing a surge across the country every day. It's like a new height, a new peak in terms of numbers of corona cases. And so we're sensitive to that. We are not going to put anyone's health and safety in jeopardy. As of today, our plan is to reopen schools in September. But we are, we're real people, we're responsible leaders. And so we're not going to put anyone's health and safety in jeopardy. And we are in consultation with the health officials every day.
We know that you care about health and safety. We all do. You've cited several times the survey of parents showing great interest in coming back to in-person learning, but several people have pointed out in the chat that survey was done before so many states around the country had seen a dramatic surge and had concluded that they couldn't open their schools. At this point, I think of the 10 largest school systems in America, New York may be the last one that's planning on opening in person, or maybe there's one more.
I think
and I applaud you for working on that, but the context here matters. And as Robert mentions, we're going to have to be ready to consider alternate plans if the virus comes surging back in New York, based on the health data. And I know you understand that. We have a question from Eileen Merritt, which is, what happens if parents have children in different schools? And can there be a coordination of the schedules for the siblings so that they are in the school on the same day?
Great question. We're thinking about a sibling policy. I know that our Deputy Chancellor, Josh Wallach, is working to think through what that would look like. And we obviously want to make this as easy as possible for families, understanding that no matter what we say, it's going to be a very, very difficult lift for many families. So we're working on it. Nothing formal yet, but it's certainly something we're aware of.
We've had a number of questions about young people with IEPs or special needs and whether there'll be extra capacity to educate them in person, given their social and emotional needs. Perhaps you could speak just a bit on those very important young people with IEPs and other needs.
Yes, I can. I'll start by talking about our District 75 models, because we do have different program models for District 75 schools for that reason, both because a lot of times in District 75 schools, the ratios are different, which will allow for students to come in more often and potentially come in daily, every day of the week. But also because we recognize that many of our students need a different approach and different interaction in our District 75 schools. I know the team is working through a policy that's more global, because we know that there are students with IEPs across our system, not just in District 75, and they're working to think through how to provide quality education to our students with disabilities, many of whom we've heard from our families who said that the remote learning in the spring wasn't as effective for them. So we're thinking through it, we're working on it. I know the Chief Academic Officer is still in the place where she's trying to develop a policy. I will hand it over to our Executive Superintendent Rosales just to talk about what you're doing on the ground to work with our special education directors in the borough offices and thinking through how to support special education.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually want to shout out our special ed division and our regional enrichment centers, because you might not be aware of this, but we are providing related service providers to our students with IEP at our regional enrichment centers. And we have 3 right here in Manhattan. So a big shout out to that. I want to say that we have been providing professional learning in the areas of special education to our teachers in our school administration staff, from progress monitoring to foundations of IEP. We're also supporting children and families with all 12-month mandated services through extended school. We're working on identifying students who are aging out of our public school system. That's really important for us to ensure that they're receiving their supports and they have a transition plan, as well as working on a parent info session on the IEP process and behavior supports at home. So all that information and support will be made available to our parents. I want to say, and I want to shout out our Manhattan Borough Citywide Office in partnership with our districts. We have provided a total of 56 live learning sessions to our special educators and general ed educators when it comes to special education services.
So we are over time, and I know that our DOE leaders have multiple events tonight, and we're really grateful that you've spent this hour with us. I would just like to ask Congressman Espaillat and my fellow hosts if they'd like to offer some final words before we wrap up tonight. Congressmember?
Yes, thank you, Mark. Gracias a todos. Quiero decirlo en español también, porque sé que hay muchos padres que no hablan inglés y a lo mejor debemos de hacer esto también en español, ¿verdad? Y en otros idiomas, para que los padres tengan acceso a esta información tan importante. I was just saying that perhaps we should do this in Spanish and in other languages, because I know there are parents out there that don't speak English and that really need this valuable information. But I really want to thank all the participants, all the people that asked questions and that came in. They really did, I think they have very thoughtful questions, including whether or not school is going to open up again. That's something that's still up in the air if you look across the country. So thank you so much for being part of this, and thank you to all the elected officials on the call.
Thank you, Congressmember. And Assemblymember, would you like to offer some final words?
Sure. Well, thank you, first of all, Mark and everybody, all the colleagues on here and the DOE staff. I see this as the beginning of the conversation, right? There's still so much left, so much work left to do, so much more input that we need from our families. And I just hope that we can continue having this conversation, since all of us are still very concerned for the safety and well-being of our children, but also of educators and staff. One of the things that I always talk about and that I am committed to working with you all to figure out is that emotional and social support, the mental health services are so important. As we've seen, every aspect of our lives has been impacted by COVID-19, and the schools where our children will be, whether remotely or not, are kind of the center of their lives for most of the year. And so I'm very much committed to continuing to work with our colleagues to continue this conversation, so that our communities can feel at ease that there is a plan, and a plan that is responsive to their needs as we go forward to the school year. So thank you so much for the work, and let's continue having this conversation. Thank you,
Assemblymember. Senator, please.
Well, first, Mark, let me thank you and our co-host, Congressman Espaillat and Assemblymember De La Rosa, but also the Deputy Chancellor and the Executive Superintendent. I've said at the beginning that we're all trying to work our way through this. And I don't think that anyone has the exact answer. If it did, we're pin a medal on that person right now. But we have to be flexible enough. We have to be able to listen and think about what people are asking, because people are looking at their bubble, their situation with their children in order to meet their needs. And obviously, you and the other central staff and the chancellor are thinking about 1.1 million children, 150,000 employees. So it's a humongous, humongous task. And quite frankly, we're all in this together. And as long as we continue to talk and just have the patience with one another, we're all going to get through this, whether or not we have the various programs that you'll put out, or that changes a little bit, or even if we just go fully remote, whatever it decides, we're just gonna come together and make it work and help one another. In unity, there is strength, and that's what we need to do, and give love also. So thank you all. And thank you for all of the people that were in the chat, asking your questions and everything like that. That's extremely important to help refocus about what we're doing on a continuous basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Adriano and Carmen. And thank you, Adrienne and Marisol, for this excellent discussion. And to the over 400 of you members of the public who asked great questions. We got to as many as we could, but this was a really valuable and meaningful dialogue. And I'm grateful to everyone who was able to be part of it. Thank you. Would you like to offer any final words, Adrienne or Marisol?
I will say this, and then I'll turn it over to our executive superintendent. Just thank you. Thank you for allowing us to be here in this space and to share what information we have with families. I just want to do a plug. On July 28th, we will have a family and student information session. The chancellor will be there. We're looking to have the executive superintendents there to answer questions from parents in the district. So that's July 28th. More information on our website. And then also, look to your schools. Our SLTs will be making decisions. Our SLTs have parents on them, so reach out to your PTA, PA president to learn more information about what's happening. Your PA, PTA president should be in the know. Reach out to your schools, and your schools will be reaching out to you, without a doubt, over the summer to give you information. And with that, thank you. Thank you to the families that are here. Turning it over to our executive soup.
Yeah, I just echo, thank you so very much. I do want to say this, in my 27 years as an educator, as a mother, as a Latina, and in this current role as the executive superintendent, I cannot be prouder of this collective effort. I want to remind everybody, we built a system in a week when other districts did not do that. We put electronic devices in the hands of our children who did not have them. And we served 110,000 meals a day right here in Manhattan. So in times of uncertainty and times of loss, grief, we continue to show up as New Yorkers, right? And we are such an inclusive, supportive community. And for that, I am so grateful. I know that when we come out of this, I know I'm going to be a better leader, at least in my head, but I know I'm going to be a kinder person for sure. So thank you to each of you for your partnership, your support, and to all of our families for their partnership and flexibility. It was an honor. Un honor estar aquí. Muchas gracias.
Gracias a usted. Thank you, Executive Superintendent. Thank you, Deputy Chancellor. And to everyone, we appreciate you being part of this discussion. Please stay safe. Be well, everybody. Bye-bye.